My name is Rae Gabriel, and I was born and grew up in Nova Scotia, and then left when I was 17. And that's important to the later part of my story. Anyway, I gradually migrated to the West Coast and had a very interesting, exciting, affluent, fulfilling life on the West Coast. I went to art school, I was married to a filmmaker, I was a psychotherapist, I had a very, very active political life, as in activism, social activism. And so, very fulfilling life. Anyway, in the late 90s, I decided to come back to Nova Scotia to write. I had 3 books that a publisher in England was planning on taking on, and I needed to get away and write. And initially, that was looking really, really great. In the year 2000, this is what the kind of change from the West Coast, living in Los Angeles, shopping on Rodeo Drive, having Persian carpets on my floor and Villery Bosch in my closet and designer names.
You're doing pretty good for yourself.
I was doing pretty good. Anyway, I came back. I bought an 18th century granary up near Tatamagouche and 4,800 square feet, and started to convert it into a retreat center.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the summer of 2000, I did things like I went to lecture in England at a conference. I already, even though my retreat center was not open for business, I, over the summer, had 3 different clients come and stay anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks, had bookings up till December. And so it looked like my transition to Nova Scotia was going really well. And then on September the 21st, 2000, my granary and everything in it burnt to the ground. And I had no insurance, so I found myself completely penniless, with only the shirt on my back, and devastated at the loss of everything that had meaning in my life. Yes, some of it was the artwork and the carpets and the material things that I had, but also all of my own art, all of my writing, all of my kind of sacred treasures that I had gathered from traveling.
So you literally lost everything that you've known
Yes.
in the world, basically.
Yes.
And how old were you, Rae, at this time, if you don't mind sharing?
In my upper 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you lost everything.
Yes.
When most people want to be firmly established, you
Yes,
lost it all.
Yes. And in 1997, I'll just regress, I had lost several $100,000.
Yeah, you got that from the retreat, right? You said you had a really firmly established retreat out west and everything.
Well, there was a group of us, women in Vancouver, who had a retreat center on Galiano Island. And after about, I don't know, 12, I guess about 12 or 13 years that we had that during the 80s and the 90s, people needs and focus started to shift.
Right.
And we decided to sell it. So yes, I had a pretty good chunk of change.
Right.
And had invested it, and there was a big scandal with this company in Vancouver, Aaron Financials, and lost everything. So in 97, I lost a great deal of money. That did not have a great deal of effect on me.
So we're talking upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars was lost in 97.
Yes.
3 years before the fire.
Before the
yeah,
fire,
yeah.
yes. And I actually remember sitting on English Bay because my kayak was still stored in Vancouver, and I had taken it out and been out on the water all day. It was, I guess, March or April, and I was sitting having coffee at the little cafe there and writing in my journal and saying, well, you know, I've just lost my life savings, but really my life hasn't changed that radically. Here I am sitting on English Bay. It's a gorgeous day and I'm just loving it.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously the universe did not get my attention by taking away all my money.
It had some more to take from you, apparently.
It had to take something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had bought the granary in 97 when the crash came. I was here in 97. When the monetary crash came, I went back to Vancouver. I'd only been gone about 5 months, so my clientele were just, I had clients who hadn't seen me in 2 or 3 or 5 years who wanted to see me.
Right, right.
So I slipped right back into that and spent the time in Vancouver sort of recouping financially, so I was back on a...
So this was after
This is 97 to 2000.
Okay.
So, 2000, I finally decided, yes, I'm coming. I had met with a publisher on one of my trips to England, and so I was committing myself to write. And so here I am, I'm in Tatamagouche, and I've got this wonderful place, and I've got clients coming, but I also have free time to write, and I'm just getting all prepared for this wonderful life that I have planned. And then the universe gives me another flick in the head, and that was the fire.
Wow.
And that, there are a number of things about that loss that were different from the loss of money. And one of them is, and I mentioned leaving home at 17, one of the things that happened as a result of my leaving home, I was the oldest daughter. It was a family expectation that the older children, especially the female children, would stay in the home and help support the family until they married.
Right.
Well, I left home.
Yeah, you did the stark opposite.
And there was what I've heard from neighbors and mostly brothers' ex-wives, the stories of the resentment that arose out of that, that they felt that their life would have been better had I shouldered my responsibility and stayed.
Just the stereotypical female expectations of the time.
Yes. And so I think that plays a great deal into the fire, because it was one of the younger children, one of my brothers, who deliberately torched my place.
Oh, wow.
And so there was not only the loss of security and everything physical that was of meaning and precious to me, but also this not understanding how anyone could do that.
Let alone your brother.
Let alone my brother.
Yeah.
And then I found out that he had put in a $60,000 insurance claim on his home insurance policy, claiming that he had $60,000 worth of tools and guns and things at the granary. And I was told by the investigator who was investigating his claim that I was also going to be charged with arson, and that this was definitely a set fire. So,
Oh my goodness.
so there were just so many aspects. The money thing
Let's just put this in perspective. You're 97, you lost the money, you handled that was
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Rebuilt yourself up in between, bought the granary, moved back to Nova Scotia, and then in 2000, this happened, and
Yeah.
now allegations of you setting the fire and being a part of this as well,
Yeah.
so, wow.
And to add to that, and you can cut this out if you want, my brother told me I was not to speak to the insurance adjuster, and that if I messed it up, he would kill me.
Oh my goodness.
So just all of this completely, like I lost my center.
The world,
I just
yeah.
totally lost my center. And this is for me why my life's journey and the work that I do, my work with the tarot, my work with predominantly women in the past, and even now I'm doing a group, a women's group, was meaningful in my own life. Because the first day I walked back onto the property, this is about a week after the fire, I walked back onto the property, the insurance adjuster is there, and they've got bulldozers and things to sort through
Mm-hmm.
the
Right.
debris. And this piece of paper comes fluttering on the breeze. And about 3 feet from me, it dropped to the ground. And I could tell by the back of it, it was one of the Druid animal cards, simply by the color of the card. And so I picked it up, and it was the swan. And the swan has been a symbol, a really integral symbol in my life. And I really believe, I'm a Jungian, so I believe in the power of symbol. I believe in synchronicity. I believe that there are signs, that there are things that happen in our life that gives us a... I picked up that card. It was the swan. I knew at that moment that this was part of my path.
Right.
That the loss was a part of my path. So that was one of the first kind of the shedding of the light. It doesn't mean that my life physically became any less challenging,
Of
or
course.
that emotionally
Right.
it became completely, I didn't have a complete enlightenment.
Right.
Okay, but
You knew there was some purpose
but
to it.
there
You
was
knew
a
the-
purpose.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
was a
yeah.
purpose that related to my life and my growth. And so, and that was the same day that the inspector had told me that I was looking at being charged with arson.
Oh my goodness.
And
So where did you go from there? So when all
So-
this, the Swan happened, what
Yeah.
were the next steps in
The
Rae's
next
life?
step- Well, I went.
Good or bad?
I went from an hour salary of $85. My sliding scale was $85 to $130 an hour in Vancouver. So in less than 6 months, I go from that to working minimum wage, and I believe at that time it was less than $6. It was
Wow.
just under $6. Being a Pinkerton.
What is a
guard.
Pinkerton?
That's a rent-a-cop.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
I worked at Zeller's I don't know if you remember when they would put, if you had a bag with you.
Okay,
when
yeah, you
went
put the
in
little sticker on
put
it,
the
yes,
sticker on
yeah.
it. And I also worked at the flea market up at Penhorn Mall on Sundays, where I had to tell men in their big trucks that this is a fire zone, you cannot park there. Well, I was called names that I wasn't even sure what part of my body that was.
Huh.
Anyway, it was an education.
What
So-
do you want to actually to give the full effect of someone? What were they called? Like here you go from an esteemed psychotherapist to a parking superintendent, basically telling people where they can park, and these men looking down upon you. You know, like,
Yes, literally from their big trucks, because I'm less than 5 feet tall. So they're sitting in their big, you stupid fucking cunt, who do you think you are?
oh my goodness, wow.
So, so the money was different, the respect, but that was the key.
Right.
That was the key. I had created a life on the West Coast in which I was well respected. As a psychotherapist, people place their lives in your hands and they tend to put you on a pedestal. So you get a great deal of reverence and appreciation. It was such a contrast. But that's for me, I had never dealt with the fact that growing up poor and a woman in Nova Scotia, that I had low self-esteem and that respect was absolutely essential.
Mm.
And so I had created it outwardly, but I hadn't created it within.
Right.
And that's been my journey.
Since all that, yeah.
Yes, the last 15 years has been both rebuilding my physical comfort, but also going back to the very basics of finding out who I am, what has meaning for me, and really finding a great deal of joy in my life. And some of the things that I had the opportunity to meet some wonderful people here in Nova Scotia. I've had the opportunity to really take the time to find out what it is I want to do and what it is I don't want to do. And so for a while, at 65, I decided, well, I'm just going to retire. I did lead groups and did tarot readings, and I'm a Reiki master teacher. I actually studied with one of Takata's 22 disciples, so I've been doing Reiki since way back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to move from being a rent-a-cop into doing many of the things that I did on the West Coast.
Right. But with that inner respect and that inner journeying that you've needed to take, you know.
Yes.
Well, let's just, I think we covered most of it, but let's just kind of go back to the idea, we always hear about it so often about, money isn't the answer, the physical world isn't the answer. Obviously we have to make our means and make our ends meet as best as we can here, but it seems like that's something that's been said so many times, you know what I mean? And as somebody who has experienced it firsthand, who had the material world in her hands, you know what I mean, in her grasp, then lost it in your mid-50s, and then reclaimed yourself in your life right now. Like, what type of advice, like not to shorten it up, but in a quick way, how could you explain that to somebody, the importance of that shift and the realization of that in your life?
Well, I think that's where a place like this becomes important, because what happens whether you start meditating or you start doing yoga or you start learning to read the tarot or anything that allows you to connect with the self, the authentic self, allows you to shift what's important. And so, all of those office buildings down there in the center of the city have people who are there every day for 8 hours just so they get their paycheck at the end of the week or the month. And for me, that is such a shame, because the potential for joy doesn't come from having another pair of shoes or another leather bag, or that's what society wants us to believe will give us happiness. But it's getting in touch with the heart. It's taking that time to do yoga that allows you to get in touch with the heart, to get in touch with the soul. And it's that soul connection. If anything, it, as I say, that card, the swan, is connected to my soul, and that's what I would go back to in my darkest moments. That's where I would go and just sit and meditate, sit and ponder, and ask the question, why, universe? And now I know the answer. And I think that what maybe one of the things that I have come out of this with is that it's amazing how little you can survive on and still have a great deal of joy in your life. Mm-hmm. Because, I've actually had people a couple of times, because I was doing groups with women. Oftentimes there were women who were very wounded, and I've had people or women say to me, well, obviously you've had a charmed life. Not all of us have been that lucky. People who didn't know my story.
Right.
So, so the thing is that one can overcome incredible. The human spirit is amazing. That's one of the things. There were times where I just didn't want to go on. There were times where I just didn't think I could stand on my feet one more minute in the cold. You have to remember that standing outside up at Penhorn, telling men that they couldn't park where they wanted to park, in polyester uniforms, when you're used to the sunshine of California.
And the respect of everybody.
Boy, there were times when I thought, oh, I am going to perish in this cold. But you don't, and you go on, and it gets better. And I just am truly blessed in my life. And part of it has been this journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rae, I mean, the moment you told me the story, I knew it would help so many other people because, you know, that physical struggle is a reality for so many people all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when we're taught that it's a physical world we live in, you feel like you're failing when you're not on top of
Yes.
it, you know what I mean? So just to show how you went from having what this physical world offers to having it all taken from you so fast, and then to reclaim a deeper meaning in your own life, I think it's just an incredible lesson of hope, an incredible lesson of wisdom and love, and just inspiring that I think myself and so many other people can take and apply it to their own lives to realize, you know, there's much more going on than what we might see here all the time, and it's just an incredible story of hope and inspiration, and I think everybody's going to be very grateful to hear your story. And
Is there one last?
add it in, yeah, add it in, go for it, yeah, of course.
This is a moment when I knew that I was over the hump.
Okay.
And I was working again as a rent-a-cop. I was working in the landing in the underground parquet, you know, giving out tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have to check that metaphor. Anyway, this woman drives in, and I knew I recognized her. I wasn't sure where. Anyway, she goes in, she parks her car. But in that moment, there was instant recognition. I knew she recognized me too. So I'm thinking the whole time she's in there, who is that woman? Who is that woman? Anyway, she comes out an hour and a half, 2 hours later. And she said, "Aren't you Rae Gabriel?" And I said, "Yes." By this time, I realized that she was a vice president of Puget Sound Electrical out
West?
Out west.
Okay.
In Washington. And that she and several other vice presidents, I had done a weekend retreat on Galliano
Okay.
for this group of executives. And I said, yes. She said, you know, quite mystified.
Wow, yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
And what came out of my mouth was, "I'm practicing humility." Now, people on the West Coast wouldn't think that's too odd.
Right.
But I knew that when I said that, "I'm practicing humility," that I had made some kind of shift within me that yes, this is truly part of my journey. So I was still, you know, working for $6 an
Right.
hour, but that was one of the times that I knew, yes, we're going to be okay, Rae.
Oh, that's beautiful, Rae. Well, thank you so much for sharing the story, and I know others are going to appreciate it and love it as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Rae. Thank you.
And I just, again, want to say how wonderful this place is.
All right. Awesome.